What's up, guys? Atapark here, and today we are doing the second video on the topic that we covered yesterday, and that is the relationship between tanks in a raid scenario. Now, if you remember from yesterday's video, we talked about how the previous video is going to focus more on the actual raider, the actual tank, or the guys out there that are maybe thinking about being tanks. This video is going to do the exact opposite. We're going to talk about you in a leadership position, whether you're a guild leader, raid leader, you're the guy in charge, and you want to be able to foster this relationship between your two tanks in a raid scenario so that they are able to almost make this hive mind-like setup where they can instinctually, without even thinking about it, know what the other tank is doing, that they can pick up on the subtle signs that their fellow tank is going to cover them, get their back, pick up their slack, that the tanks themselves are working together for the betterment of the raid, for the betterment of the guild, or whatever group you have set forth. So I guess the biggest question here is, as the guy in a leadership position, you're that raid leader, you're that guild leader, you're the one that's picking the tank, you're the one that's setting them up for success. How do you ensure that this mentality, this understanding, this instinctual bond between tank 1 and tank 2, how do you make sure that it is created, that it's maintained in a raid over time? Because if you guys remember from yesterday, we talked about all the pros of having this hive mind-like mentality. Less stress on the healers, less stress on the raiders, less stress on the raid leaders. And we talked about the cons of not having it. And it's pretty much the exact opposite. There's a ton more stress, that there's just a pissed off tanks because you guys are fighting back and forth, stuff like that. So the question is, how do we kind of set up the tanks so that they can create this hive mind? How can we foster that relationship? First and foremost, you need to make sure that open lines of communication are available for each of your tanks. Now, we talked about in yesterday's video that as the tank yourself, you need to be willing and able to talk to your fellow tank. However, if you're in the leadership position, you need to make sure that that is happening. So if you notice, and this is where as a leader, you need to make sure you understand what's going on. If you notice that there's an issue, if you notice that one tank is not where they're supposed to be during a raid encounter, you should start to question that. Okay, why is tank 1 on the right side for this raid, for this boss, when I told him he needs to be on the left side? Now, what's going on? Is he just being a dick? Is he picking up, some slack that the other tank missed? What's going on? And you need to understand the scenario and the situation, and then make a judgment call and say, okay, is there an issue, or was something being covered? Was there something that I didn't see that's being handled? And then once you have made that judgment call, you need to open up the lines of communication. Now, the appropriate time to do this is going to be after the raid. You do not want to, in the middle of the raid, start barking out, tank 1, you need to do this, tank 2. No, that stuff is not gonna fly very well during combat, mid-combat, mid-raid pull, mid-boss fight. Because there's so many variables, and making that snap judgment off of a limited amount of data during a boss fight isn't going to set you up as a leader for success. Instead, you need to kind of evaluate, and then after the night is over with, figure out what's going on. And you need to make sure that your tanks are willing and able to communicate. If this means that they go to a different Ventrilo channel, which honestly I wouldn't suggest, but, or whatever voice communications you use, if that's the case where they go somewhere else and they're able to call out cooldowns, or if you just tell them, you guys have priority. And this is something that we did back in Mists of Pandaria. My guild, While we do push content a little bit, we are a very social guild, and I think especially during the end of the expansions, where things get a lot looser, and people kind of, to avoid burnout, people start to do some, more likely that they're going to do some silly stuff. They're going to pull extra crap, they're going to not interrupt, they're going to, not do this, that, or the other. And as a result, Vent got really hectic. Everybody's talking about, bullshit for the weekend, and, oh, my girlfriend did this, and oh, whatever. And the tanks, while we're doing the hard content, the tanks are trying to call crap out, and they will hesitate to do so, or at least they did, because people were talking. And that's something that I've addressed in the past. And if you find that your tanks aren't able to communicate in the public forum, in Ventrilo, Mumble, TeamSpeak, whatever you use, because other people are talking, you either need to shut everybody else up, a literal, clear vent, ha ha ha, or more than likely you're going to tell them, hey, you guys need to talk over everybody else. And if people keep talking, you just get that much louder, because there needs to be communication between your tanks. The second thing is you need to make sure that you are swapping responsibilities. And this is something that across the board, when I've raided with other guilds, when I've looked up, guides and read other people's stuff, for the history of World of Warcraft, that is always something that I would suggest that you avoid, because like I said, doing all this research and raiding with other folks, it's something that not a lot of people do. And that is, we find that Tank 1 is great at handling this one raid mechanic on this one boss. So he does it all the time. Great example, let's say something like Heroic Iskar. With the interrupting the ads for Phase 2, Iskar's out flapping around doing his thing, and all the ads spawn up at the certain health percentages. And if you have one tank or one healer that are dispelling the bombs and interrupting the mobs, and you never get that second tank to do anything, then that first tank, one, he feels like there's a lot of pressure on him. There's a lot of responsibility. If he fucks up, well, it's not anyone but that tank's fault. And there could be things that are going on, tired, burnout, whatever the excuse is. And in reality, God forbid that one tank isn't able to log on for the night. Something happened, computer crashed, somebody got hurt, stuck late at work, whatever the case might be. He might be on vacation. And now you have that second tank. You may have a backup tank, but nobody's done the Eye of Anzu interrupting ads. Nobody's done the robot for Sakrathar. Nobody's done things that are, the raid mechanic that are the whole point of that boss fight, that are the key to that fight. Because he always did it. And you need to make sure that you swap out the responsibility. This week, you're going to do the Eye of Anzu. You're going to interrupt the ads. Next week, I want, the Druid tank to do it. Next week, you're going to do this raid mechanic. You're going to be in the robot. Next week, the other guy will do it. And that way, every tank, or at least your two main tanks, those that are with you each and every week, are going to feel like, one, they are sharing the responsibilities. Two, they will be willing to talk to each other. And I can tell you guys, when I tanked Sakrathar on my warrior, I was able to switch to my paladin to help my guild out and start healing. And when we got our druid tank, and he's sitting there tanking, and he straight up asked me, how do you do Sakrathar? Explain to me, TLDR, explain it to me like I'm 5. What do I do? And because I'm able to speak to him and relay information, it makes it a hell of a lot easier than him having to figure it out himself. And that open line of communication was the ticket. Other than that, you need to make sure that the stress levels for the tanks are at a low. This means that you are ensuring that one tank isn't trying to grab too much stuff, taking away from the ego and the job responsibilities of the other tank. Again, I had mentioned on yesterday's video, this is a problem in LFR, especially when you have somebody that is very high geared, somebody that's doing heroic or mythic content that doesn't need to be in LFR. They're doing it for help a buddy or to get valor points or, whatever the case might be. And then you have the dude that barely skates by with the gear level. He's 650 and he's barely able to do it, and he can't hold aggro. And you got the well-geared tank that will pick everything up. Well, if you are in a guild and a legit, a competent and planned out raid group every week where you have one guy that's picking everything up and the other guy that is unable to do so because tank number 1 keeps taunting everything, stress levels are going to rise. And you want to make sure that that's not happening. You need to ensure that the tanks are both splitting the responsibilities. Again, from yesterday's video, and most of the stuff that we talked about yesterday applies to you as a leader. You just need to make sure that this stuff is happening. Again, if one tank is tanking everything, they are taking away from the other tank. They're creating stress on that other tank. Maybe even themselves are feeling stressed. Maybe they feel, okay, this guy doesn't have the gear. He doesn't have the knowledge. I have to do it all. Oh my God, this guy's an idiot. The healers are stressed out because they're spamming all their fastest, most expensive heals. They're not getting a break. They're not having fun. They're bitching at the raid leads. They're bitching at the guild leader. And it's just this avalanche of stress. And when you're in a leadership position, you need to make sure that you are doing what you can to diffuse these stressful situations. And one of those is ensuring that the tanks share responsibilities. So, if I had to sum it up, and we're going to go ahead and do that, it's this. Make sure that your tanks are both splitting the responsibilities for the raid so that each one of them feels like they are a superstar. Remember, generally speaking, tanks want to show, whether it is consciously or subconsciously, tanks like to show how badass they are. How many hits can I take? How many mobs can I grab up? What can I do to show that I'm a fantastic tank, that I have all this gear, etc., etc., etc. So my raid thinks that, I'm really good and I'm really cool and I can take all these punches to the face. You need to make sure that that is split so that both of those guys are propped up. And it creates and it fosters this relationship of, okay, that dude's doing his job, I'm doing my job, we're good to go. You need to make sure that open lines of communication are there. And if that means sitting them down and going, okay, guys, what happened tonight? Tank number 1, what's the deal? Why are you grabbing everything up? Okay, tank number 2 is too undergeared, or he's too slow, or he's not doing this. All right, dude, what's going on? Do you need help? Do you not understand something? And then definitely want to encourage these guys to talk to each other in raid and out of raid. And when you do this, where you are ensuring that both tanks are doing their job, that they're both splitting the responsibilities 50-50, that they are talking to each other, you'll find that because they are doing their job, again, it's this trickle down. If the tanks are getting punched in the face and they're doing their job, the healers are okay, the DPS can do their thing, and stress levels should be slightly lower. So hopefully that helps. If you guys like the content that I'm spewing out here, I would greatly appreciate a like and a subscribe. Hit both of those buttons. They super encourage me, more than you guys even understand, to continue making content like this. I also posted in yesterday's video, which surprised to me, received one comment, which is always super encouraging. But I posted, and I kind of wanted to say this, and maybe I should have said it at the beginning. But if you guys have anything that you want me to cover, whether it's a concept, an idea, a mod for my mod series, or a scenario where you just want me to give my 2 cents to share with you my perspective, please by all means share that with me. I'd love to talk about stuff like that. And until next time, guys, I'll see you.